Oh, let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Alexis, Dent.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. You're my second. I'm recording a handful of out-of-towners this week, and you're my second one.
Yeah, I listened to the one you just put out with The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, an old camping buddy.
Yeah, me and him used to go to the same summer camp.
Tennessee. So are you from Tennessee then? Or?
No, I grew up outside of Dallas, but the camp was in Tennessee. It's one of those, like, my dad went to it when he was a kid, so
Right,
kept
I got
the tradition alive.
No, I've I had something relatively similar. It was a horse camp in Pennsylvania. So.
Okay.
So yeah, Miracle Mountain Ranch in Pennsylvania.
That's the
Christian
most
horse camp.
ass camp name ever.
Christian horse camp, evangelical Christian horse camp. Lots of fun for a young, very gay, even though you don't know what gay is, trans person who doesn't know what being trans is. Place, let me tell you.
We had some horses at our camp. Ours is called Camp Country Lad.
Okay,
But we lost some very talented horseback riders to camps that sound probably a lot like, what was it, Miracle Mountain Ranch?
Miracle Mountain Ranch.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a few kids who our horse riding program was not quite enough for them, so they left to go to like real horse camp and rodeo places.
Well, and when I was a kid, one of the things we did as part of our school stuff, because I was homeschooled, is there was a lady at the church who owned a bunch of horses, and so we did horse lessons, not just horseback riding, but like care and grooming and all that stuff. So I actually know how to clean out horseshoes and
Oh, wow.
get burrs out of their mane and all that stuff.
Now we never got that far. I think they had to clean stalls, and they had to do a fair amount of riding and actual horse, like barrel racing and that kind of thing,
Right,
but
right.
nothing beyond that as far as maintenance goes.
Okay.
And I was never good with horses. I'm not somebody who's scared of horses. I know there are a few people who are very terrified of, because they're such large animals.
They are intimidating, especially like if you're up with like a Clydesdale or something. It becomes very obvious to you very quickly that if that animal decides to be annoyed with you, you are going to not be on this planet anymore.
Right.
And yeah.
I've heard stories of, plenty of people getting bucked off horses. Or my dad worked at the camp. He was a horseback guy, and he got kicked in the head by a horse one time.
One of the kids in my cabin the last year we went to Miracle Mountain got kicked in the chest and broke like 6 ribs.
Yeah, they are some gnarly animals.
He was also an asshole and was doing stuff he wasn't supposed to and pulling the horse's tail to be a dick because he was an 8-year-old and had no real experience with horses. And there you go.
Hey, listen, you get what you sign up for, you fucking asshole 8-year-old.
Talk shit, get hit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of animals, today's episode, the movie you have brought to me,
Nice segue.
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
That is right. It is probably the movie. I hate a lot of movies, but it's the one I hate the most.
Okay. Why is that?
For your listeners, I am transgender. I'm non-binary specifically.
Okay.
And for years, the only experience or knowledge that I had of what a trans person was what was represented in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Which is a real bad representation.
Which is fucking gnarly.
It is. I'd never seen this movie until I watched it for the show. And for most of the time, I was like, okay, this is kind of just like
generic Jim Carrey. Yeah.
It's not great, but it's not it's just like fine. And then the stuff with them being like Einhorn's a man.
Yes.
And everything.
The montage of him plungering his face because he kissed a tranny.
Yep.
Yes.
It's all, and I was just like, oh no.
Yes.
Oh, it's all downhill from here.
You start watching those scenes now, and you think back to, what was it, 94, 95?
94. 1994 American
and you go,
comedy.
Like, even in 94, that was, well, I guess not. I guess gay rights might have started moving a little in the 90s, but the rest of us were still just kind of on the fringes.
Right.
So I was homeschooled. I was raised conservative evangelical. I did not know what a gay person was until I was 16.
Okay.
Like that it existed. The only thing I knew about it was like what a youth pastor, I guess, had said, you got to watch out for the gays. They're going to try and recruit you. But nobody would ever tell you what that meant or what that was.
Right. It's not like the army where they have offices that they're trying to sign you up to join the gay agenda.
So yeah, exactly. And I can tell you right now that the gay agenda is not as exciting as it sounds. Mostly my gay agenda is things like make sure both of my kids are doing well in their schoolwork and get their homework done and get to bed on time. And, maybe try and catch a movie with my husband on, Friday night.
Right.
But at the time, I was, 1994, so I would have been 12. And we watched it like when it came out. Not in theaters, but my parents rented it for us when probably when I was about 13, when it was still kind of in the new release-ish part of the Blockbuster.
Okay.
We had just moved to Indiana from Pennsylvania, if I'm remembering right. And so there's this movie, and for the most part, and my parents just, they put it on, they walk away. They figure, okay, it's a, PG-rated comedy, they're fine. We're going to go do our thing, and the kids will be satisfied for a little while. And for the most part, he's talking with his butt. That's funny. Mm-hmm. And, this is happening and that's happening. And then the stuff starts where, and for those who don't know, just the real basic plot summary is Jim Carrey gets hired. He's a pet detective, and he gets hired to find the missing Miami Dolphins mascot.
Snowflake the Dolphin.
Right.
And there's a lot of intrigue, and Jim Carrey is the wacky foil to every other person in the movie who's just a normal, coming out of like a regular cop detective sort of movie.
And the police chief is Detective Lois Einhorn or whatever.
Yep.
Captain Lois Einhorn. And she keeps trying to scare him off the case or whatever. Mm-hmm. He, in turn, they wind up making out at one point. She climbs on top of him on the desk and gives him a big old kiss. And the line he does is, "Your gun is digging into my hip."
Yep.
And that comes into play later, of course. Because,
oh, yes.
Your gun. And so eventually, through his investigations, including dressing up in a tutu and going to an old folks' home, he finds some records about the former Dolphins kicker, Ray Finkel, who was blamed for their loss or whatever.
Yep.
And winds up figuring out that Finkel had transitioned and become Lois Einhorn.
Right.
And so he puts the two pictures together, and it's Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Mm-hmm. Einhorn is a man. And then he goes, Einhorn is a man. And then you have I'm going to say 7 or 8 minute long montage. It's a long
montage.
It goes.
I was
brushing his teeth.
He
chugging Listerine.
He literally takes a plunger to his face.
Right.
Which is dirtier than any human being's mouth is going to be.
A solid 30-second long throw up, and then he's laying there exhausted at the end of trying to cleanse himself from coming into contact with a dreaded tranny. Mm-hmm. And finally,
don't forget after the fact when he chews probably several packs of gum.
Yep.
To continue to get that dreaded tranny taste out of the mouth.
Exactly. And he's laying there exhausted, and then goes, "Your gun is digging into my hip," and then rolls over and throws up again. Mm-hmm. And my sisters were giggling because, oh, the guy's, he's throwing up and it's all this and whatnot. And I'm just sitting there with this undefinable, like, I can't explain how it made me feel because I didn't have words for how it made me feel. It made me feel dirty. It made me feel ashamed. It made me feel afraid. It just, everything about it, even though I didn't have the language for understanding it, made me upset. Like, it's probably the first time at age 13, it's probably the first time I had something close to like a suicidal ideation.
Really?
And I didn't even know why. I was depressed. After watching that movie, I was depressed for probably a month.
Oh, man.
Solid. And then it just keeps popping up in my life. Like, it seemed like for years after that, go over to a friend's house. They've got TNT on the cable. Oh, look, Ace Ventura's on. Or, you're at the quad, in one of the college dorm, like, common rooms, and TNT's on. And hey, look, there's Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. And it just... And I stayed in the closet for a really long time. I didn't come out as bisexual until I was 26. I didn't come out as... non-binary until like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And some of that was the evangelical conditioning, I guess you could say. And then just some of it also was just the culture of the area I was in. The rural Midwest isn't exactly a place for education.
Right.
But on the merits of the movie itself, because I know that you're a big film guy.
Oh, yeah.
I do kind of want to hear your opinions of the movie, the plot, all that stuff, because most of my memories of it and my criticism of it are focused around that plot point because it holds such an outsized bit to me that some of the rest of it, I won't say I don't remember it because I do, but it seems to kind of settle into the background as far as levels of importance goes.
Well, and that's totally 100%. Once I saw that part happen in the movie, I was like, this is going to play a lot into Alexis's critique of this.
Oh, yeah.
Which, for very obvious reasons. And there's even more, like, even after that montage, when they're getting to the...
when he's got her caught at the end. Oh, yes.
When he's got her caught, and then everybody is puking into the water. And
that's why Roger Podacter was killed. He found Captain Winky.
Yep.
What's sad is I can quote all that shit. I haven't watched the movie in 20 years.
Right.
I didn't watch it again. I'm sorry, I didn't watch it again in prepreration for
No,
this.
that's fine. I can understand why. I can
probably quote, like, any of those scenes, I can probably quote start to finish. Just because they're stuck in there and they won't come out.
That's mind-blowing. But all right. So you're watching this for the first time and you feel this intense emotional sensation. You're feeling all of this. And it's such a shame that the rest of the movie isn't even close to being like... This is one of those movies that I feel like a lot of people sort of think is like a comedy classic.
Right.
Like a lot of people reference it in Jim Carrey's early career, and a lot of people bring it up. And I watched it, and I was like, okay, I guess this is like... There's funny... Jim Carrey's, working his ass off.
Right.
To earn... I'm assuming he probably was making $20 million a movie at this point in his career.
Yeah,
he did
this was
on.
right around where he really blew up, yeah.
But this isn't even a movie that is good enough to merit you being forced to have this mental block about the rest of it.
It's not something where it's not like I was watching Taxi Driver and there was something really like awful and transphobic in it that scarred me up where I can at least then go, well, yeah, but it's Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
It's this throwaway plot line about a dipshit in a Hawaiian shirt with bad hair that pulls his butt cheeks apart and pretends to talk through them. And has a bunch of animals, and that's it. It's a featherweight movie. It's a cotton candy of a movie.
It's really, it's a movie that should be
cyanide laced cotton candy, but cotton candy.
Yeah, but cotton candy. It's not. It's a dessert of a movie. It's real light. It's real fluffy. It's a physical comedy based movie, which is not really, as far as comedy movies go, slapstick. If slapstick is the entirety of the basis of the movie's comedy, it's not really my bag.
Right.
I like Jim Carrey, but I'm not familiar enough with a lot of his early work as far as like. I think Dumb and Dumber is the only one of his like slate of 90s movies besides until seeing this that I had seen.
Right.
So I never knew Jim Carrey until like late in his sort of mid-career or late career, I guess. I don't even know where he's at now.
Era,
Eternal Sunshine, Bruce Almighty. I'd seen that with my youth group.
Okay.
Because I also grew up pretty Christian, not evangelical, but sort of non-denominational Protestant, moving around between like Presbyterian and Methodist and stuff.
So as my parents would call it, one of the hellbound idolaters.
Yeah, probably. That sounds about right.
If you aren't their specific sliver, sorry, Charlie, going to hell.
Man, can't wait to go hang out in there. That'll be fun time.
I just always say that, nah, I'm not going to go to hell. I'm going to go up to heaven, kick God off his throne, and take over.
It's not a bad strategy. So, but in this movie, I was sitting here watching it, and I was just blown away at how not lowbrow, but just low effort.
Right.
And
There's nothing special about the way it's shot.
Yeah. There's nothing special about all the characters are super cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. Even Ace Ventura as a character is he seems real dumb and he's real weird, but he's smarter than the cops. And that's just like, all right, fine. That's the plot of any basic cable detective show. We could have just had, this is like Psych, but with pets.
Right. Like if you took...
Or The Mentalist.
Well, for that matter, if you took Ace Ventura out of the movie, okay, and it was just a crime drama, and the MacGuffin wasn't Snowflake, the dolphin, it was just something else, it would be like maybe a Lifetime level movie.
Yeah.
Like if you move the focus to Lois Einhorn and she was a cis woman and it was about her struggling to solve this case and keep her people under control. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the level of competence and acting and shooting and everything would maybe rise to a daytime Lifetime movie. Right.
Or maybe like a Disney Channel original movie or Nickelodeon original movie.
Right.
Something in that vein.
So it's hard when because there's tons of people. Oh man, Ace Ventura! I love Ace Ventura. I see it online. I've got friends like that. It's like there's nothing there to love. So when somebody tells me, "Oh, Ace Ventura is so funny," I know what they think is so funny.
Right.
They're thinking of the moment where he spins the police chief, spins her around when she's in her G-string so that everyone can see that she's tucking.
Right.
And then like 20 people throw up.
Right.
That's what they find hilarious. Mm-hmm. That is the part that they think is funny. Because you can't tell me as a grown-up that, you find Ace Ventura funny and what you're thinking of as funny is Jim Carrey running around in a tutu pretending he wants to catch a football and falling over a hedge.
Right.
That's not what you're thinking of. You're thinking of the one moment in the movie, which is the same hack comedy bullshit that everyone whines that they're not allowed to do anymore, which literally just, the basic of the joke is, lol, gay is bad.
Right. I was listening to a podcast last night where people were talking about sort of how the audience perception of comedy has evolved.
Right.
Where it's not necessarily the point of view they took. It was Ari Shaffir and Red Band talking on a podcast.
Okay.
And the point of view they were taking was it's not necessarily the fact of like the way comedy has evolved in movies and in stand-up from the 80s to the 90s to the aughts to now. Is there's some stuff that was funny then that is just, you cannot say it's funny now. Not because it's like, oh, it's not woke, but because you look at it and you're like, all right, the time has changed.
Right.
Just, like, I can't sit back and watch this and think it's funny anymore because it just doesn't, like, we've all moved on from thinking this is funny.
Right. It's kind of like trying to go back and look at Lenny Bruce's stuff, and yeah, he's like this groundbreaking comedian. Mm-hmm. But a lot of his jokes rely on stuff that's not in our cultural experience anymore.
Right.
And so you can't, like, observational humor does not age.
Exactly.
It just doesn't.
It's always evergreen. That's this stuff, or it's not evergreen rather. This there's stuff in here in movies like Ace Ventura, and it's just not going to age.
Right.
It's dated. It's a product of its time. It's a product of like the weird gay panic, and it's just not gonna. It doesn't hold up.
And you were talking about Red Band.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've found interesting, because I'm heavily online. I am what's known as terminally online.
Extremely.
Yes. And so I get a lot of the, oh, comedy's bullshit now. You can't, they killed comedy. Mm-hmm. And, the recent blow up was the Dave Chappelle one.
Right.
But there's been, the Louis C.K. and da-da-da-da-da. And actually, no, it wasn't Dave Chappelle. It was the Shane Gillis bit.
Yeah.
Which everyone, not everyone, but a portion of an audience jumped to his defense, screaming about how, all these SJWs just don't want anyone to have fun anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, the reason you guys are upset isn't because you can't tell jokes anymore. It's because you can't be lazy hacks and rely on prejudice to get your laughs anymore. Mm-hmm. That's the comedy that went away. All the jokes that I see that they complain that they're not allowed to say anymore all boil down to like one of three things. It's either minority B stereotyping, mm-hmm. lol gay is bad, or ew trans is gross.
Right.
Like, that's it. And if that's all the joke you can make, you don't deserve to be successful. I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, if that's what you're relying on, I don't have a problem with edgy jokes. Like, my podcast is obscene. Mm-hmm. We are filthy. And I tell a joke, not necessarily always on my podcast. I tell a joke about the time I got raped. Like, I tell a good rape joke. I love the look on your face, by the way.
Because, well, I like that you have one that you are, because
it's not a great joke, because I'm not a professional comedian, so I'm not like really like a good joke crafter, but I have one.
You ever checked out Wendy Starling?
The name sounds familiar.
Well, you should, if you're appreciative of a well-crafted rape joke based on the experience of getting raped, check out Wendy Starling.
I will say, one of my favorite, I guess you could call it a quote-unquote rape joke, I think it was Wanda Sykes, who does the thing where she talks about how she wishes she could leave her pussy at home so that when the rapist came up, she was like, sorry, big boy, don't have it with me today. Like, that one, that's fucking great.
That is great.
That's brilliant.
It's a great joke.
And I tell jokes about being trans. I tell jokes about being gay. I frequently call my husband a dumb faggot on our show because he is, and so am I. We're allowed to use those words.
Of course.
But even if you're not gay, you can tell a gay joke. It's just you have to rely on something a little more clever than that person's gay and that's funny. Mm-hmm. So, like, what they're mad about isn't that we're killing comedy. It's that we're making them have to actually work.
Well, because all the base level stuff is now below base. All of that stuff that used to be just like skimming off the easy stuff.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit.
The low-hanging fruit has hit the ground and rotted. As far as what we can be capable of in doing comedy.
The low-hanging fruit, or as we call it in the Midwest, the Matthew Shepard.
Oh, boy. Hey. I was interested once we started talking about sort of the way the film has aged. I never really, and I do this every once in a while, is look back in the reviews at the time.
Okay.
And a lot of the reviews it got pretty mixed reviews. According to Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 47%. You got some your standard good folk, people who sometimes I trust critically, sometimes I don't trust, like Roger Ebert.
I enjoy a Roger Ebert review. He's not. I don't always agree with him,
Right.
but man, when he goes off, he goes off.
Oh yeah. I feel the same way. I love a Roger Ebert review, even if I don't agree with what he's saying.
I was pleasantly surprised by his review of Jackass, where he gave it a positive review and talked about how it was basically vaudeville.
I mean, it is. Jackass is
I know.
a great movie.
I adore the Jackass movie. Like 2.53, we're starting to get not so much, but that first movie is, I mean, it's very well done. It's not the stupid fest that people think it is. And I'm somebody who cannot watch like much of Arrested Development or Curb Your Enthusiasm because I can't stand seeing people embarrassed. So watching Jackass, you think, how is that possible? And it's just, I guess, their shamelessness, I suppose. But anyway, the reviews, as you were saying.
Some of the reviews, I mean, some of the reviews don't even mention it. Roger Ebert doesn't mention any of I guess you could call, we'll call it the third act trans turn.
Okay.
Roger Ebert doesn't mention it. He just says it's a long, unfunny slog through an impenetrable plot. Gene Siskel called it an appallingly bad movie, a certain candidate for worst of the year. And Steve Gatos of Variety overtly mentions it, says, film sputters and eventually slows to a trot due to the script's inability to give Carrey anything more than a free rein to mug and strut, and a third act payoff that takes the film's generally inoffensive tastelessness into a particularly brutal and unpleasant stew of homophobia and misogyny.
Nice.
Extremely accurate.
Extremely accurate, especially because, and that review also tells you that the term transphobia didn't exist then.
Right.
So they had to call it homophobia and misogyny because we were literally so fringe, they didn't even have a word for hating us.
They didn't have the T didn't exist on the LGB spectrum at that point.
Not really, no.
Not in common parlance
and
anyway.
We were, I think at that point, beyond Ace Ventura, I think there was like maybe one or two other movies. I'm trying to remember what the one with the it was like the obsession one where she wound up like stalking a guy and she was trans. Mm-hmm. It's not Basic Instinct. That's the Sharon Stone one.
It's oh man, I know.
Crying Game.
Yeah, the Crying Game. That's the one. Which was back in what, 87, 88?
Yep. And then there might have been one other one that was like that. And of course, Silence of the Lambs, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
Still haven't seen Silence of the Lambs. I'm ashamed to say.
It's a good movie, and I've read the book, so I know that part of the plot there is that Buffalo Bill actually isn't trans. Like, he went to go try and get surgery and hormones and stuff, and they turned him down and said, no, you're not trans. You're just like, you're mentally ill, not trans. Even though back in the day, trans was
classified
as a mental illness. They basically said, no, you're delusional and you have multiple personalities. You're not transgender. So it's, I can't say I give it a pass, but it's not quite the same thing. But yeah, like there wasn't Boys Don't Cry, I guess, was around this same time. And I think that would have been the only sympathetic or semi-sympathetic view towards trans people, and it has its own problems that I'm not going to get into right now.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is even reading positive reviews of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Right.
They still, Rita Kempley and Desson Howe of the Washington Post said the movie was a riot from start to finish. A spoof of detective movies, and cheerfully bawdy as it is idiotically inventive. But they also say there are unfortunate elements that were unnecessary, a big strain of homophobic jokes for one, and profane and sexual situations that rule out the kiddie audience for another. But
I think that profane sexual situations they're talking about is in the beginning where he gets a blowjob for finding the lady's dog.
Also, and don't forget the part where he's railing Courtney Cox while all the animals are watching.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But also, he doesn't even get his pants taken off during that blowjob sequence, which makes no sense.
None at all.
They didn't even bother to zoom in any further.
I mean, like, not even. Well, are you pulling it out through the zipper hole? Like, that seems a little chafy.
You got a real long dick that comes out through the bottom of your pants, of your Miami shorts.
Right.
But that's the thing is, the other question that I found myself asking during this movie, and maybe you can enlighten a little bit on this one since you saw it when you were young, was this movie is... It's clearly sort of got kids movie trappings, but it's definitely not a kids movie. And I don't really know what the audience of the movie actually is supposed to be.
I think, honestly, it was kind of supposed to be a kids movie. I think if I had to hazard a guess, I would say it was written to be a goofy, kind of kid-aimed movie. And then that somewhere along the way, somebody was like, no, we've got to edge it up a little bit. We've got to add some punch to it. And so they threw in the Courtney Cox scene, or the blowjob scene in the beginning is completely unnecessary.
Right.
There's no narrative or any other reason that it should exist, especially if you're trying to portray Ace Ventura as this wacky, lovable loser. Like, he shouldn't be having immediate success with, it's hard to explain because, like I said, the whole movie is a kid's movie except for these small, 30 seconds here, 2 minutes there, and then the last 10, 15 minutes that are very much not. The rest of it, if he was just being a wacky animal guy, you're right. What you said before, it would be a Nickelodeon movie.
Yeah.
It would be a Disney Channel movie. That's the level it was at.
I mean, it even won Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award for Best Favorite Movie Actor. Jim Carrey won for this and for The Mask. It also won the Blockbuster Entertainment Award for Favorite Actor in a Comedy and Favorite Male Newcomer in a Comedy.
Yeah, this was his breakout movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Which means that this is a movie that families all across America were sitting down to watch together.
And I guarantee you that the only discomfort that mom and dad had about little Billy and Sally seeing it would have been maybe the blowjob scene or the Courtney Cox scene. That all the homophobia at the end.
No, that's just the 90s for you.
Yeah, he's plunger in his face and puking in the bin because he kissed a boy. Yeah, that's perfectly fine, kids. That's how you should act.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that I've run into this a fair amount watching movies for this podcast. And I feel like there's certain movies that if I had seen them at a different time in my life, then I would have had a different view on them than I do currently.
Right.
But I don't know. I can't even remember what kinds. I would not have been allowed to watch this movie at the age where it would have seemed like it made sense to watch.
If my parents had actually bothered to stay in the room to watch the movie, they would have turned it off immediately.
Yeah. You guys would have had to probably burn the videotape.
Yeah,
and pay the late fees out the ass to Blockbuster.
The first non-PG rated movie I ever got to watch was I went over to a friend's house to spend the night when I was 14, and we watched Aliens and Terminator 2. So I jumped right into the deep end.
Oh, diving right in. I like that.
And then he was my one cool friend who had his parents didn't care, and so that was awesome. So it was I would go over and watch Hellraiser and freaking Alien and Aliens, but all the stuff that I had missed. Starship Troopers, which I love that movie. If I were to ever do an episode of how much I love a movie, it would be my defense of the Paul Verhoeven Starship Troopers movie.
See, I feel like you're not alone on that either.
There's a group of us.
Everybody who I've talked to, I haven't seen it myself. Another one of the movies that I still have yet to get around to.
Well, I know you're not a big horror movie person, right?
I've become one. I'm a big horror person now, but it's only recent. I wasn't allowed to watch any of that stuff for a very long time, so I missed the boat on a lot of things.
I was going to say, because it's not a horror movie, but it is an amazing satire of fascism and recruitment films and everything else.
I do love a good satire, and I do love Showgirls, which, Paul Verhoeven, as far as I'm concerned, after Showgirls, perhaps the master of creating very uncomfortable satire situations.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to watch that. This is a question that I don't know if there is an answer to. I don't know if there is any way of saving this movie. But if there, in your mind, is a chance to reboot Ace Ventura, which they're talking about doing, and not even the dumb kid version that they, I think, did a couple years ago.
Right.
If there's a way to make Ace Ventura exist in the modern world and step up to where we are now, do you think that there's any way that could be done? What would you make changes to?
Well, so the second Ace Ventura movie, When Nature Calls, trades in its homophobia for racism. Because he goes to, I think it's South America.
Okay. That's the one where he crawls out of the rhino's butt, right?
Yeah, and he sleeps with the chieftain's daughter, and the chieftain has like literally a bone in his nose and stuff.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, like, personally, I think the series is too tainted to survive. But if let's say that we were able to Men in Black the first couple Ace Ventura movies from the world's cultural memory, and they were trying to start it from scratch or reboot it, as you said, I think you could. Well, could you pull it off? I mean, slapstick comedy is one of those things that doesn't. It's always, I won't say in, but it's always around. Like, it doesn't necessarily age the same way that, what's the deal with airline food?
Well,
does.
yeah, that's the reason why you can still watch a classic silent film. You can still watch a Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin or Three Stooges and still be entertained.
So, since Ace Ventura is at its heart a slapstick movie, I guess you would probably keep that. But instead of spoofing what would have been at the time like your 80s kind of standard cop dramas, you would have to probably spoof something more along the lines of a Breaking Bad or a Wire.
Oh, okay.
And try and take that in there, or hell, maybe even oh God, what's the name of it? I've just lost it. Sons of Anarchy, I guess.
Okay.
But that wasn't what I was thinking of.
You'd have to do the version of Ace Ventura where Ace butts heads with Hank from Breaking Bad.
Right. You're where the animal gets stolen because I don't know.
Turns out there's meth in the collar or something.
There's meth in the dolphin's pool. I don't know.
Right.
But the point being is you would have to update what you were spoofing, because as we pointed out earlier, the plot without the guy talking out his butt, the plot is very much just a super duper basic, boring cop drama.
Right.
So you've got to. I think Ace Ventura being rebooted will just wind up being like a scary movie type satire, where it's just a super broad, not very funny or relevant. Just, look at the references we're making to the movies and shows that have come out. Yeah. Like, that's what it would wind up being. I don't know that it can be safe.
I don't know if it can be either. I think that there are certainly smart ways of doing dumb comedy and broad comedy. I think that there's people and shows that still pull that off, and there's a place for it.
Yes.
But I don't know if there's a way to make Ace Ventura work.
I don't know that there is either. I think you're right. I don't think it's savable. I think, like I said, at best, you're going to wind up with Scary Movie 9 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But for cop dramas.
This to wrap it up, I will say, so Ace Ventura got nominated. Jim Carrey was nominated 3 times over for the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst New Star at the 15th Golden Raspberry Awards at the Razzies.
Good.
And he lost. He didn't win.
Who won?
I'm gonna give you the rundown of who else was nominated that year, and I want you to guess. I feel like it might be pretty easy, but we'll find out. So Jim Carrey was nominated for Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask.
All right.
Chris Elliott was nominated for Cabin Boy. Chris Isaac was nominated for Little Buddha. Shaquille O'Neal was nominated for Blue Chips, where he played a character named Neon Boudreaux.
All right.
And Anna Nicole Smith was nominated for Naked Gun 33 1/3.
So I'm going to say it would be either Shaquille or Anna Nicole.
Anna Nicole. Okay. R.I.P. Ding, ding, ding. Congratulations.
Also, Cabin Boy, not a bad movie.
I've heard. But you and my buddy Tyler would get along. Tyler Mesnerich. He loves Cabin Boy.
Yeah. It's been a few years since I've seen it. I've only seen it probably twice, I'd say. But I was entertained by that one, at least. And I'm sure that if I go back and look, since I didn't see that till I was older, I'm sure there's probably going to be a couple of homophobic jokes in there.
Probably.
But
well, speaking of people who do
it was funny and dumb
comedy well, Chris Elliott.
Yeah.
You ever see Eagleheart?
No, I cannot say that.
Oh my gosh. Eagleheart's a great Adult Swim show that stars Chris Elliott as a sheriff.
See, I don't really have much in the way of cable. Hardly ever.
I think it's probably on adultswim.com.
Okay.
If you got internet access.
if it's on Hulu or Netflix, then I probably, have a chance of watching it generally otherwise.
I think they have it on Hulu also. I think it's part of the Adult Swim
I'll have to check
slate.
it out. I'll have to check it out.
But Chris Elliott does a wonderfully dumb job on Eagleheart.
Okay.
And
I'll give it a look.
I think he pulls it off. Maybe we could get Chris Elliott to reboot Ace Ventura.
Maybe he
Who knows?
could.
Maybe.
Maybe that's the way to save it, Chris Elliott.
Alexis, thank you so much for coming through. I'm happy that we could make this work.
I'm happy we could
Despite
make
your
it work
electric
too.
car troubles.
Yeah, but stupid Turo.
Fucking Turo. If you ever look to sponsor me, Turo, don't. I don't want your kind.
We don't want your money.
Where can the listeners find you on the internet? And you got a podcast that people should check out.
I do have a podcast. It is called The Violet Wanderers. Violet as the color, Violet. Yes, that is a sex toy joke in the name of the podcast, and that should give you the basic idea of what it's about. My husband and I have either our friends or interesting people that I meet on, and we will do serious interviews. We've interviewed a survivor of September 11th, one of the founders of Occupy Wall Street, somebody who does professional cosplay, but we are also incredibly filthy. And I play lots and lots of really stupid games that I make up. We will do things like make a Mad Libs out of an incels post. There's a game we run called Incelmageddon that's terrifying. We discussed... the collapse of the Traditionalist Workers' Party, which is a Nazi party. I made a guessing game about how did they fall apart, because making fun of alt-right chuds is always fun.
Of course.
But we roast each other. We talk shit. My husband and I nonstop talk dirty. One of the games we do is called Pervert Bingo, which is where our guests have to guess what kind of filthy BDSM sex did my husband and I get up to the night before. So red flags all over, as Kyle Clark said on the episode of This Is Rad I just did. If that's not your bag, then it's not your bag. But if you're interested in some really dirty, off the wall, very, very gay stuff, that's The Violet Wanderers. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, all that shit.
Good stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at FilthAlexis, FILTH Alexis, no spaces, no nothing. And you can follow my show at The Violet Wanderers.
Wonderful. Well, be sure you check that out. Leave a rating, subscribe, all that good stuff as you do. And you can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates. By the time this episode comes out, I'll be solidifying the last of my road run through the Midwest and the South.
Where in the Midwest?
I'm going to be in Indianapolis, which would be the closest to you.
I will come see you. Yeah, that's like 90 minutes away.
Yeah.
So.
Black Circle Brewing on Sunday the 10th.
The Mean Boys did their stand-up show there, the last tour that they did.
Yeah.
It wasn't a live show, but it's like all three of them went up. It's a good venue. They probably had like 40, 50 people there.
Right on.
So, yeah.
I'm excited.
We'll absolutely get your contact info, and I'll see you there.
Sweet. And the full run shows are on jlightcomedy.com on the shows page, so just check that out. I'm going to be gone the 6th through the 14th or 15th, maybe even longer than that. I have to double check. I'll figure it out later. And if you like the show, please tell a friend, subscribe, join the Facebook group if you haven't yet. Links at the top of the show notes. And that's about it.
All right.
Alexis, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.
Bye.
Bye.